I know that we've gone down the path of judging Mr. Poilievre on everything he said in the past. When Minister LeBlanc comes forward and defends the choice of the Prime Minister, I hope that you read back to him his Hansard when he went after Mr. Wright on exactly the same topic and ask him whether or not it's something he should be doing. Is it hypocritical?
Mark Carney has finally crawled out of hiding after Donald Trump's most recent tariff threat. And what exactly did Canada's elite negotiator have to say? You're going to have to wait and see, and it'll either make you laugh or cry. I don't know. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Subscribe, follow, like, comment your thoughts down below, and share this video. It turns out that this wasn't actually a conspiracy theory after all, not one that was funded by Russia, like some people were saying. Nope, it turns out it's actually true. Also, speaking of conspiracy theories and things you don't want to talk about, there is a rumor floating around that a cabinet shuffle is nearing, and two people who I'm sure you really don't like may not have much longer in it.
There's some discussions of whether or not there should be a stronger response to or countermeasures when we're talking about U.S. imposed tariffs. There was a poll that came out suggesting that many Canadians do want there to be a tougher response, the whole leaning into elbows up. And whether or not we're actually seeing that, particularly when we saw the digital services tax come off the table. What sort of leverage does Canada now have that could be used? And do we need a stronger stance than we're currently seeing?
No, I think our strength needs to be our unity, Arthi. We need to be united, the federal government under Prime Minister Carney and the premiers, to weather this storm. And as I said, to have set deadlines, but also don't take a bad deal. And that means we're going to have to weather some challenging times. We may have to have the government provide some assistance for core sectors like steel, aluminum, and others to weather this period, even until the fall, until we get a deal. And then we need federal provincial cooperation, because the wider risk for our economy is actually the big, beautiful bill. We talk so much about tariffs, but the U.S. is trying to draw manufacturing jobs away from Ontario and Quebec by lowering the corporate tax rate, by giving depreciation bonuses and research and development tax credits. We're actually going to need the federal government and the provinces to align to make sure that these short-term tax incentives and luring of jobs to the United States, reshoring as they call it, although North American manufacturing since the 50s has all been about shared and integrated supply chains. We're going to have to strategically provide these incentives to business to maintain their jobs here. So we need unity. We need strength. That's our best countermeasure. More reciprocal tariffs actually hurt our economy more. So stay on target, as I like to say, and then united as Canadians and the provinces with the federal government having a strong and united front to push for a good deal.
Mark Carney won an election by convincing Canadians that tax cuts were evil, even though they help absolutely everybody, and that Poilievre's plan to let you keep more of your own money and to encourage investment was somehow dangerous. And it worked because most people didn't look past the slogans. Most Liberals in Canada are so brainwashed, really, that they have no idea what it is that they're even talking about. They have never even looked into it and what the positives and cons are to literally anybody's platform. And I'm a Liberal because I'm a good person, and I'm a good person because I'm a Liberal. And if that guy's saying it, the globalist banker technocrat who normally I would reject and resent and smear on the internet, well, he's a Liberal, so obviously that means he's a good person too, right? And he's doing it for the right reasons, right? And it's not because he's going to take advantage of my naivety. It's not because he's going to take advantage of my weakness and my ideology of my belief system that this is how the world works. No, definitely not.
There's not a lot of evidence right now. And with regards to negotiations, for any country or any jurisdiction to have a tariff-free agreement, Canada finds itself in a situation at the moment with a way of having close to free trade continuing. But there are issues, obviously, in the steel, automobile, pharmaceutical and aluminum sector, as well as softwood lumber. So we need to stabilize the situation for Canada. But the tariff for Canada is almost the lowest in the world imposed by Americans.
Tariff. What's your response to that?
That is Prime Minister Mark Carney heading into his cabinet meeting. He spoke with reporters very briefly, saying overall that there is little evidence for a tariff-free agreement. He was asked about the potential for new tariffs by the United States, a potential of a hit of new 35% tariff for all Canadian goods.
And it's totally not because he just wants his own private hockey rink that I'm paying for, which is literally being built, by the way. And you know what? It's almost kind of laughable here because the entire election campaign, Mark Carney, I was a goalie at Harvard, as though that is some type of an aspiration. The Liberal government is spending just shy of $350,000 on an artificial hockey rink outside the Governor General's residence. So, yeah, we're going to spend less to invest more, hey? That's not working out too hot, is it?
Breaking news! A new report from the Parliamentary Budget Officer shows that the federal bureaucracy continues to balloon. Okay, so the report shows that by the end of the last fiscal year, okay, so end of March 2025, the federal bureaucracy ballooned to 445,000 employees. Yikes. That's an increase of over 13,000 bureaucrats compared to the previous year's departmental plans.
How on earth can we ever cut taxes with a bloated bureaucracy? Pierre Poilievre is so evil for wanting to do that, for wanting to cut these departments that don't really do anything, that are there and they don't need to be there, for wanting to cut some of these things. Oh, conservative cuts are so bad. And then there's crickets when the Liberals talk about cuts. The wildest part, though, is the fact that millions of Canadians bought it. That is so disappointing to me because they cheered for the very policies that are gutting their own paychecks, their savings, their futures, that of their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren who are still going to be indebted for what? What do we have to show for it? Honestly, because the facts of this is Canada now ranks dead last in the G7 for business investment per worker. We've lost over $150 billion in private capital to the U.S., by the way, in recent years. And Trump's tax-friendly America is starting to really win capital fast. Yeah, to the point where even Canadians are fleeing to move there because it just makes more sense, right? Under Trudeau and Carney, Canada raised the capital gains inclusion rate from 50% to 66.7%, making it even riskier to invest in our country. And don't forget, by the way, the industrial carbon tax. Yeah, all of those wonderful things that hit small businesses, farmers, consumers, the absolute hardest. And all this while our prime minister tries to tell you that, the world is so broken. Oh, Pierre Poilievre is the bad guy because he wants to fix how badly we broke it. Yeah, got it.
If we allow it to be focused so narrowly on trade, we lose the ability to bring things to the table that America and Donald Trump want. You know, we're talking about border security. We're talking about fentanyl. We're talking about immigration. We're talking about national defense and national security and a whole series of other things. That's why we at my institute are always talking about the grand bargain strategy. Don't focus on trade. We don't have many cards to play in the trade relationship, but on these larger relationships, critical minerals, all kinds of things, we have a lot of cards to play, and we need to be able to broaden these discussions beyond trade so that we can have cards to play with.
Because in reality, it's actually not complicated how to fix this. It's to cut taxes to workers and businesses to make Canada investable again. And they're not doing that anytime soon. To get rid of the carbon tax in its entirety. It was previously, we have to have this in order to trade with the EU. It turns out we don't. We have to have this so that we can trade with Asia. It turns out it's not implemented in Asia at all. In fact, they're quite skeptical about it. They have had a handful of conversations, but it has not gone through. And it honestly doesn't look like it's going to anytime soon if you read the news in that part of the world. And we need to streamline regulations and reduce government interference in every major sector. That's the reality, especially on housing and infrastructure. And most importantly, Canada, we need to stop demonizing profit. And we need to start welcoming private capital back. Because while it may sound nice when you have a government who's all like, oh, the big elites, the big rich people of the world, yeah, it's only fair if they pay more. That's not how the world works. If they pay more, they leave, and they are.
For Minister Hodgson, so in talk of the major projects, the nation-building projects, are there some or any projects that are sort of at the top of the list at this stage in the discussions? And can you elaborate beyond making regulatory compliance easier, whether the federal government plans to fund any of these projects?
So we are very much in the consultation stage right now with our colleagues in the 13 provincial governments who have perspectives on major projects, with First Nations partners who have perspectives on potential projects, and with proponents on potential projects. There is no specific or ranked order list today. What I could tell you is the projects that come to the top of the list when you sort them by our 5 criteria are likely to be the ones that would be getting designated earlier rather than later. And so I would go back to the 5 criteria laid out in the Act and that were agreed to by the Prime Minister and the 13 provinces and territories, as if you have something in mind, run it against those 5 criteria, and that should give you an idea of where we are in things.
And by the way, unless it is, I don't know, maybe post-war or something like that, it is not normal, and it is not okay, and it is not a good sign for the government to be involved in national building projects. That's for the private sector. And if you don't want the private sector to exist, may I recommend, I don't know, maybe you should try, maybe moving to North Korea. It sounds like they're just living a great life there. Yeah, definitely. That's why there's so many of them who risk their lives to leave. And that is a very dangerous path that Canada is currently walking down.
As I say, and I say it here, and I've been saying for years, we have to put a final end to this notion that Ottawa tells Alberta to pay up and shut up. And that's what Albertans have been told by this Liberal government for a decade. Their frustrations are entirely legitimate. Alberta is the #1 net contributor, per capita contributor to Confederation, paying more in tax than getting back in federal programs. The major industry of Alberta has been under relentless attack for the last 10 years. The rural and Western way of life is under attack with ridiculous gun bans, all while allowing repeat offenders to go and terrorize communities, including rural communities where crime is now, for the first time in a generation, a serious danger in communities where people didn't even have to lock their doors. So I say all of that to point out that the frustration is real and it is legitimate, and we should neither dismiss it nor deride the people who hold those frustrations. It's the job of all federal leaders and frankly all members of Parliament to redress the very unfair treatment that Western Canada has been receiving, and I pledge to do that. I understand it. For me it's personal. I was born in '79. It was a few years later that Trudeau 1 hit us all with the big national energy program. My folks were teachers, so they didn't lose their jobs like so many others, but we got smashed with the 20% interest rates on mortgages like everyone else. And I grew up understanding that the federal government had viciously attacked the Alberta economy. And so one of the reasons I got into politics was to bring fairness to my province and to my region. And we'll continue to fight for that by repealing the anti-energy laws, unlocking free enterprise, shrinking the size of the federal government so more of Alberta's money stays in the hands of Albertans, getting rid of the dumb gun laws and instead locking up the real criminals. That's how we redress the very real and legitimate frustration of Albertans, and that's how we unite all Canadians. One last thing I would say is let's build alliances. Albertans should build alliances with Newfoundlanders and Labradorians who want to develop their oil and gas. They want to develop, our Newfoundland and Labrador cousins want to double their production. We should support that. Let's develop alliances with coastal First Nations who want to liquefy and export Alberta's natural gas over to Asia to get $14 instead of $3 for it. Let's build alliances with Greater Toronto Area communities that want an end to catch and release, to lock up criminals, or to miners in Timmins who want to develop resources or who want to keep their hunting rifles.
So just quickly repeat after me. Investment doesn't come where it is punished. Investment comes where jobs are not taxed to death. And it makes sense for businesses, including Mark Carney, whose investments, of which there are over 500, consist of companies in the USA and the EU. Wow, it's almost as though you know that Canada is broken and you know that Pierre Poilievre is right. And while there are all kinds of people on the right, the left, the middle who say that the election was incredibly integral and you shouldn't question anything at all, and if you do, it's because you were paid by Russia. Well, it turns out, according to Blacklock's reporter, Elections Canada knows that over 121,000 mail-in ballots went unaccounted for during the April 28th election. Does that sound like a Russia conspiracy to you, or does that sound like, that's kind of odd? You know, you'd think there should be some justice or accountability in those ridings. Also, why are we only learning about this right now? Especially when the election was so close in so many areas.
You previously called for severe limits to population growth in Canada. Can you clarify what you mean by that?
So, first of all, I'll tell you what I don't mean, which is natural population growth. That is almost non-existent in Canada. We have roughly the same number of people who die as who are born. So all of our population growth, in fact, in the last quarter, I think there were more deaths than births. So what I am referring to is migration, net migration. We have millions of people whose permits will expire over the next couple of years, and many of them will leave. We need to ensure that more leave than come in over the next couple of years while we catch up. Well, housing, healthcare, and jobs can catch up. We've had population growth of roughly 1 million a year under the Liberals, while we barely build 200,000 homes. Our job market is stalled, and yet we're adding more people to the workforce. Our young people are facing generational highs in unemployment because the multinational corporations are giving jobs to low-wage temporary foreign workers and that ultimately leave our young people without opportunities. Our country is divided and we're not able to integrate people at this pace. So in order to fix the problem, we've got to we need to put very hard caps on immigration levels. We need more people leaving than coming for the next couple of years. And we need so our country can actually catch up. Our immigration policy should invite the right people in the right numbers in a way that puts Canada and Canadians first.
But no, they don't want you to focus on that. Instead, David Cochrane from the CBC wants you to focus on just another, drudging up some old clip of Pierre Poilievre back in the day. Unfortunately, though, Lisa Raitt was on the panel, and I do not think he was expecting this response. I think he was aiming for a gotcha, and that failed brilliantly.
So, but I want to play part of an exchange. Yeah. This is at committee, and Stephen Harper's chief of staff at the time, Nigel Wright, very successful businessman, came into public service with a lot of holdings and had to set up some of the mechanisms similar to what the Prime Minister is going through now. He was at committee, and one of the MPs asking him questions was a young man from Carleton, Nepean at the time. Just have a listen to this.
Can you explain the purpose behind the blind trust?
This blind trust follows a form that was created and drafted by the Ethics Commissioner. I transferred all of my controlled assets into the blind trust in late October. The blind trustee is the legal owner of them all now, and I'm not to have any communication of any sort, no direction, no advice, no information about what's in there. I do not know and will not know what's in there.
There seems to be some misunderstanding in the way that this has been debated by some members. We have to recognize that there are going to be people in this world of public service that come from different backgrounds that obviously the government interacts with, but that is a strength for our country.
Okay, that's from 2010. We went back 4 years earlier, too. The video for this doesn't exist, but the transcript, this is another committee appearance where Mr. Poilievre, who's the Nepean Carleton MP at the time, debating with Duff Conacher from Democracy Watch. This is when the Conservatives were bringing in the Accountability Act. And he defends blind trust, saying we would not know anything since it's a completely blind trust. We would not know what we held. That's why it's blind. You would have no knowledge that you owned it. So how could you possibly be voting in favor of your private interests if you didn't know what those private interests were? Okay, Lisa, a quick last word on that, and then I want to switch to the other topic. Anything you want to add?
Yes, of course it's worth his time because there is going to be mistakes made in the next 2 years, and he gets to point back to this point in time when he indicated that this was going to be problematic. And number two, I know that we've gone down the path of judging Mr. Poilievre on everything he said in the past. When Minister LeBlanc comes forward and defends the choice of the Prime Minister, I hope that you read back to him his Hansard when he went after Mr. Wright on exactly the same topic and ask him whether or not it's something he should be doing. Is it hypocritical of him now defending the Prime Minister when in fact he went after Mr. Wright in the past? And I think if you're going to do that, then that's fair ball. If not, you're beating up on Conservatives where they don't need to be beat up on.
Okay. I mean, Mr. Poilievre raised the issue today. This is why we're examining this issue today. So, he put it on the table. We've got to look at it and assess it. So that's what we're doing today.
Yes, David Cochrane, go back into your shell. Of course, he raised the issue. So should every single Canadian. Because this is very, very weird and odd. And you as the CBC failed to do your job even by showing that clip. That's what you wanted to fill up your timed segment with? Get wrecked. The only good thing to come out of the news cycle today is the fact that this was posted by Mr. Sunshine Baby. It's a rumor that Mark Carney is planning a cabinet shuffle this fall, and looks like, from some inside sources, Chrystia Freeland and Stephen Guilbeault may finally be getting the boot after all. Wowza. I'm Jasmine Lane. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe, follow, like, comment your thoughts down below. And as always, share this video, and I will talk to you tomorrow.